Hey, it's Chris. Here we are again talking about old games. 2022's crowdfunding, the biggest from June in 2022. What were they? Why were they that way? Where are they now? And how do you feel about them? Because again, not just about the hotness, not just about the hype, but the did you back stuff, did you buy stuff that you actually want to keep in your collection? Not just stuff that you're saying, okay, well, if it doesn't work out, I'm just going to pass it along or lose a couple bucks on it. In and out, there we go. Got the value. Okay. Because it's about buying and keeping. Value's great. We like talking about perceived value, but in the bottom line of things, whether or not the value is good or not, it's whether or not it stays in your collection and if it's a good fit for freaking fantastically you. With that being said, let's talk about this month a year ago on the crowdfunding side of things. First up, Septima from Mindclash Games. This is a big hyped one, right? You've got Mindclash, heavy, complex, layers on layers sort of style of games, putting out a witches, Salem-esque vibe game. Does it work? Is it out there? It's kind of an interesting vibe when it came to crowdfunding. They offered a little bit of extras. They offered a little bit of expansion. And it was kind of, I think, well received. 4 seasons, 5 rounds each. You're a witch trying to get more coven, trying to get more wisdom to take over as the High Witch. So when you pull up the page here, almost 13,000, about $1 million. I have to consider that a success, especially because they say, now, and this is the tricky sticking point with this one, they're most accessible yet. I don't know, man. I have a bad feeling about this. 25 minutes per player, though. I just look at that and I go, okay, how much is that underestimating? Because with these heavy games, you always underestimate, especially with the first player too. And so is this really going to be like a 1-hour game with 2 players, or is this going to be a 2-hour game? And that's what scares me with a game like this. This is why I ultimately passed on it. This is the one I could see myself of any of Mindclash games is getting. And I just don't know. Semi-co-op twist, that's a little bit tricky to pull off. I love card action-driven systems, simultaneous planning. I'm a big fan of that. And just how many things can you do, though? Solo, no interest in it. That's fine. Plenty of video, though, if you want to have that. But I don't know. Mind Clashes are more expensive and harder to get on the retail side of things because they don't come through regular distribution. So yeah, you got some deluxifications as well that they're known for, in addition to, some of the other companies out there that do this frequently. So take that for what you will. The story unlocks were fine. They were good. You can get a little bit of add-ons here too, but I don't know. It just left me going, man, I just can't pull the trigger. Like, yeah, I'd like to try it, but yeah, I'm not sure I want to pay $100 to try a game like this. Speaking of my intro, right? Like, how much are you willing to pay to do a mistake? And for me, this is more than that. Again, nothing against it. I'd love to potentially pick up a secondary market one or just a regular version if the regular version is going to be $50 instead of $80 before shipping, right? That's where I'd love to see this one. And we'll see what the final report is because I have no idea. This is like a Lacerda game to me. Speaking of that, we'll talk about that in a second. That I just have no clue whether or not I would ever have any fancy or like in. And until I get hands-on, I'm just never going to know. So if you don't know, what do? You pass, right? So that's number 1. Number 2, though, speaking of Lacerda, we're going back to Eagle Gryphon Games because they did, in the same month, Bot Factory, which was Kanban Light, essentially, if you will, where you're taking over a robot factory, trying to make robots and increase the value of them as you go along, in sort of a lighter style worker placement and just a lighter vibe overall. I'd also make the concession that it raised a lighter amount, probably about 1/10 of what its predecessors on the heavier side of Weather Machine, although I think Weather Machine might actually have been after this one, on Mars at least, raised. Those were 7 digits. Speaking of 7 digits with Septima, this only raised about $167,000, which again is not bad. But the question I had even before this campaign, I remember talking about this, was what is the market for this? The lighter, heavier worker placements, right? You know what I'm saying with that? The middleweight ones, sometimes those are people are really heavy or they're really like Flamecraft. They're not necessarily these tweener ones. They don't always work as well. So this was an interesting test of the market. Now, just off of that, I can't really tell you success or failure as well. You go over to Board Game Geek here and it's got a 7.7 rating, 650 ratings. That's really pretty good, actually. And maybe it is a good tweener. It's rising up the ranks, under 3,000, under 1,000 for family. Yeah, I mean, that's probably better than expected at this point, too. I don't think there was a whole lot of incentive to get it on the crowdfunding campaign, if I remember. $48, and I don't think there were a ton of exclusives unless you got some of the bundled stuff, because you look at these unlocks right here, right? Variants, insert. So that's fine. That's fine. A lot of previews now on these pages every day, so that was nothing new back then either, but I just didn't see the point of getting it. You were getting, I think, some of the money raised from this stuff as well, because it had some of the access to the Kickstarter exclusive editions. I don't know. Have you guys heard about this one a lot? I just don't hear it either. Not bad things, but just people prefer it, or people don't think it's heavy enough, and I have no idea what to make of this. Again, somebody brought it, and if it plays much shorter than, under 2 hours, I'd totally take a chance at it. Otherwise, again, see Septima, number 1. Now, next up, Amun. This is a 2003 game remade by Alley Cat Games as one of the original standard bearers for auction bidding style games with an Egyptian theme. And now with this edition, they're adding some modularity and some miniatures. Sort of shortly after Ra from 25th Century Games got its remake and beautification, if you will, Alley Cat did the same with this. So with Septima and Bot Factory, again, Septima is probably actually pretty hyped. 7.5. Post-campaign, probably like a 6. Bot Factory, it's like a 3, 4-ish pre and post. Amun Ra, I didn't know what to expect. I wasn't even familiar with this one, less so even than Ra. And 25th Century Games knocked it out of the park with Ra. I think that raised like 7 figures. This one just barely broke $100,000, which again is not bad whatsoever. But I think with these games that were so out of print and potentially on the secondary market demand, push comes to shove and you put your money where your mouth is, there's a huge difference between $1 million and $100,000, right? The issue with this is, along with the modularity, they said that this is supposed to be delivered in February 2023. Now, the weird thing about this is when you go over to the updates here, Pledge Manager and General Update. Now, this right here is from the end of March. They say manufacturing should be done. Shipping to the warehouses after 1 to 2 weeks. Following this, mid-May shipping, and most backers by the end of June. So when am I filming this? The second week in June right now. So when's the last update we have? The first week of May. So it's been over a month at the time of me filming this since the last update. And all they say is Pledge Manager's closed. Nothing about shipping, nothing about details from that aspect of things. Just that if you haven't put in your shipping details, they're going to charge you potentially £5 to do it later. Again, that's fine, but where's the product, right? Has it shipped? And thankfully, this is not one of those cases of blackout. No update actually is not a horrible sign in this case, because if you go over to the comment section here, you can see that people are getting their game currently. Whew. Big sigh of relief there. Big sigh of relief when I was reading these comments. So awesome. We'll see what it entails. We'll see how much people like it. 4 months overdue. Not too bad on the crowdfunding side of things. Me personally, auction bidding, very hard hit or miss. Again, another game I'd happy to have end up traded for in my collection at some point to try it out. Not going to seek it out though. Just like Bot Factory, maybe Septima, probably the most interested of the 3 so far, but even then, lower on my wish list overall. Next up, we're going to go Road to Infamy. If you know that name, it's because it's from Canvas, the creators or publishers of that. And so they did this little nice gimmick of this inflatable globe in Globetrotting, and you're navigating several different paths all at the same time with markers, with a 3D aesthetic. And again, just like Canvas with the little actual canvases, it's a little gimmicky, but it works. And so they raised a lot of money, nearly 3,000 people, $166,000 in crowdfunding, and I'm relatively impressed with something like that, right? So it is actually in the process of being delivered currently. It's over in the hubs all around the world. So we're going to see where it's coming and where it's going to go after people get their hands on it accordingly very shortly. Pre-campaign, I was probably a 5 or 6. Again, this is one I could see myself playing with my kids. Like my 9-year-old is old enough to play this now with me, and I could see myself doing this with him. So again, this one's probably higher on the trade list just from an ease of accessibility standpoint, right? Like Septima for my own personal tastes, Bot Factory for my own personal tastes, Amun for my own personal tastes in that order. But then Globetrotting might shoot up to the top of those just because it's going to be easier to get to the table. My wife would play this very easily. The rules overhead is super straightforward. And my kids would really kind of like the gimmick, to be frank. How much is this going to be marked up, though, on the secondary market or even just their retail version? Because Canvas was definitely cheaper on crowdfunding each time it went, all 3 times, than it was at retail later on. So we'll see what they have here. Although some of it was just more with the deluxifications as well with Canvas. There didn't, I don't think, pledge locked any gameplay content whatsoever. So I give them a lot of kudos for that. So yeah, I'm kind of excited to see where this one vibes, because it reminds me a little bit more in the sense of underhyped, but surpassing what your expectations are, sort of like trekking through the history did for me as well last year. So yeah, Globetrotting. There you go. Next one is Summit from Inside Up Games. Inside Up Games has had a streaking run of great hits and success, especially if you haven't heard of Earth recently, which is going to be probably a fair number of people's 2023 game of the year. Is an early contender already in the year. And this one kind of got a lot of hype all of a sudden, because I think it was Trey Parker came out and said like this was his favorite game of all time. Yeah, that Trey Parker, if I'm remembering correctly, from South Park, the creator of South Park. And so from that aspect, it got a huge bump in notoriety all of a sudden. And this was right before the GameFound campaign went live. And this was, I believe, the 3rd expansion for it as sort of a tile laying, climbing a mountain style game. Pre-campaign, pre-Parker, 3-4. Post-campaign, after I looked into more of what it was, fine. 4-5, not for me. I'm completely okay with that. Final expansion for this, and it's a good price. But the real question was, did you need all the other stuff? Because the expansion, as you can see here, was only $25. But the big box with Sanity was $100, and the all-in was nearly $200 even before shipping. Not insignificant. And original date, April 2023. So then you go over to the updates here and you say, okay, well, where are things at? Because we're already a couple months over at this point. End of last month in May, they say production update here. Almost all this stuff is done. So target completion date for production and assembly, middle of July. So you'll probably have it end of August, maybe more like beginning of September. Okay, 6 months. Who cares? Is this going to be the make it or break it for you? Did you want this expansion? Do you need all this stuff? Expansions have become a whole topic of conversation. They just come up more and more lately. And it reminded me very vaguely, and this is going to be what the video topic is going to be in the future, of microtransactions on video games, expansions on crowdfunding. Putting that out there right now. You heard it here first. But I have no idea. If you like this, more of a good thing. If you didn't have any interest in it, I didn't see a whole lot of people saying, okay, I was converted by this. Inside Up has just put out a solid product. Whether or not it's for you, though, is the more important thing. Got $134,000 with 1,000 backers, though. So again, another 6-digit project for them raised. So there you go. Last up here, 2021 look back. We have Bretwalda from Flamix Games. Over on GameFound, area control, 12 rounds, 2 actions per round. Bang, 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 bang. Fast play. The Anglo-Saxon, Irish sort of Walesian vibe that they went with. Just kind of cool appearing as well. Has a definite aesthetic appeal, and I think that's what lured a lot of people in initially to give it a look-see. And then once they saw it, they liked what they saw. Because otherwise, how do you explain getting nearly $500,000 on a game that didn't end up getting a whole lot of hype pre-campaign in the first place, right? That's not insignificant. Now, if you figure it out, it's almost $100 for the base pledge. And already with the add-ons, again, like I just mentioned with expansions, you've got 2 different expansions that are going to change the way the game is played. One of them, the first one here, gives you up to 5 players. The second one adds 3 or 4 different neutral kingdom units that can be manipulated and engaged with as well. So where are we at in terms of production? Well, they said a couple months ago that Dackers are potentially going to get their games back in October here. But if we check this back over here, it actually said June originally. So again, you're going to be probably looking at about 6 months, and that's if everything goes correctly, because this update wasn't recently. Update was 3 months ago. So if things have changed at all since then, yeah. No, now there are other updates since then, so don't get worried that it's been 3 months without an update. But they're talking about the solo mode here, and they're talking about the expansions here, so I don't think there's a whole lot of production updates in either of those. So again, pre-campaign, nah. Post-campaign, probably about the same. Area control is a tough sell for me. Not my favorite mechanic as a whole overall. Have a couple great games that already do it, and so I don't really feel a need to get other ones that do it in a slightly different way yet. Happy to be wrong, but again, this month was a try before you buy for me from almost everything across the board, and that's okay. Support publishers and companies however and wherever. Remember, crowdfunding just as good as retail. So that's it. That's the roundup for looking back a year ago. Last year's June was definitely sparse. You know, this current month of June is looking like the exact opposite, actually. This current month of June, we're getting a new Lacerda, we're getting a new Awakened Realms, you know, we're getting a couple other bigger name projects. So it's definitely going to be more spicy, more interesting. Even the 2 years ago video had a little bit more spice in it. And so I'm not sure if that one's going to air before or after this one, but we'll just see. So a little bit of everything. Best of 2023 so far, coming out shortly by the end of the month, hopefully. So best crowdfunding campaigns, best games I've played, best news. We'll talk about all of that all in one. Like I said, expansion rant as well coming up. And a little bit, got to have one more video probably in that paid content stuff. So there you go. Stay classy, play some games, have some fun. Here's your challenge. Don't buy any games today. Right? There you go. Liege said, don't buy any games today. Honey, I can't buy any games today. How about don't buy any games this week? How about that? I got nothing else. See ya. I'm out.